All right, so now recording has started. A little bit more about Skule photography. So Skule photography is a project directorship of NSOC. It was created this year. So this is the first year that we actually have a project director that's in charge of photography at NSOC. So what do we do? First of all, we manages the online gallery of Skule, which is called photos.skule.ca. There are a lot of photos on that website, dating all the way back to the 70s or the 80s. If you want to get a taste of what Skule was like before that, before our time, you can go on to that website and check them out. We coordinate and train photographers to photograph various Skule events throughout the year. Obviously, COVID has complicated things a little bit, but we're trying to manage that too. We also organize this photography and videography equipment of NSOC. So a little bit more about myself. My name is Jimbo. I'm a Civ 2TO plus PUI. I use he, him pronouns. So I'm this year's Skule photography director, and I've been just photographing people and events at Skule over the past 4 years. So yeah, that's us.
I'm muted. Do you want to talk about this slide, Jimbo?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of, so before we get started, so I guess I'll just talk a little bit more about the overview of this workshop. So first of all, we're going to talk about some of the important terms in photography. For example, the 3 pillars of photography. Hopefully you know what they are, but if you don't, we will cover them, and we'll talk some of the other terms that are important to photography as well later on. And the second part of our workshop is about getting to know your camera. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to use your cameras, because there are differences between different brands of cameras, and we are going to try to cover that in section 2. And then section 3 will be specifically about portrait photography. So Humans of Skule, as you know, it's a club that's very good at taking portraits. So we're going to spend some time on that too. And then the last part of our presentation will be about just questions. We'll take a look at some bad photos that Winnie and I have taken over the years, and we'll have a discussion on how we can improve them, which will be quite interesting. So yeah, let's get started.
Okay, well, first of all, we would like to talk about some of the important terms in photography. Like, you should probably know if you would like to do photography. Pretty important. So first of all, it's ISO. So what is ISO? ISO is basically the camera sensor sensitivity to light. At higher ISO settings, your picture becomes brighter. At low ISO settings, your picture becomes darker. Consequently, ISO can have a critical effect on the way your picture looks. High ISO settings produce more image noise than low ISO settings. You will get best quality results by keeping your ISO as low as the light allows. But keep in mind that some of the cameras produce more image noise than higher ISO than the others. Generally, the larger your image sensor is, the less noise it will produce. That is why DSLR cameras perform much better for night photography than just any other phone camera or a mirrorless camera. We'll talk about that later in the getting to know your camera section. So now there are 2 pictures on the right. One of them is taken at a much higher ISO setting than the other. So we're going to have a little activity. We'll have a poll to see if you guys can figure out which one is taken at a higher ISO setting.
All right, so I'm going to launch the poll right now. So you've got about 10 seconds to complete it. It's a very simple question. Yeah.
Ooh. Whoops. Wait, can you guys see this? Okay, you guys can see this. It's wonderful. Okay.
All right, so people are responding. That's awesome. We'll wait 5 more seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're gonna end the poll, and we're gonna show you the results. So yeah, it seems like most people got it correct. So the picture, so here, right here, this picture on the right was taken with a higher ISO because obviously you can tell that it's brighter, right?
There's a lot more
Yeah.
noise. Yeah. And if we get a closer look, wait, let me just close this. If we get a closer look, you'll see the picture on the left has a lot more detail than the one on the right, which means you have a higher picture quality. It looks sharper. It looks a lot nicer. And you might be wondering, what is a high ISO? What is a low ISO? So here there's a chart on the right that shows you ISOs for different light conditions. The image quality will vary at different ISO settings depending on the camera you use, but generally the lower the ISO you use, the better the quality of your picture is, meaning that your picture will have a lot less noise and looks much sharper. So you can let the camera set ISO for you automatically, or you can set it manually. Automation is the easiest and it's usually reliable, but it will not always deliver the best result. So I definitely recommend setting your ISO manually, because that gives you a lot more space for you to control your photo taking process. So I would just look at if it's very bright, I would go to like 200. I never tend to go above 800 for ISO settings, just to keep my picture as sharp as possible. Even if it's very dark, I'll just get more light from shutter speed. So speaking of shutter speed is essentially, the shutter is essentially a shield in the camera that opens to let in light for adjustable amount of time. This allows light to travel through the lens to expose to the image sensor. Shutter speed is measurement of that time, usually in fraction of seconds. So a lower shutter speed will allow more light to the camera and therefore produce a lot more exposure than the faster shutter speed. Now we have another activity. There are two pictures on the right. The one on the top, one of them is taken at a faster shutter speed than the other one. So we're gonna have another poll to see if you guys can figure that out.
All right, so I'm gonna launch the second poll, which is about shutter speed.
Which one was taken with a faster shutter speed?
Answers are coming in. They are looking pretty good right now. All right, so I will give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll end the poll right now.
Yeah. Seems like most of you guys got it right. The one on the top was taken with the much faster shutter speed, generally because like hummingbirds, their wings flap pretty fast, so you need a faster shutter speed in order to capture just one moment of the position of the wing. Yeah, nice. Okay, now I've talked about 2 of the most important pillars in terms of photography. Jinbo will talk about the third one, which is aperture. There you go.
All right. So thanks, Wimi. So again, like we talked about earlier, we're going to cover the 3 pillars of photography first. So now we'll cover the first 2, ISO, shutter speed, and this is the third pillar, which is aperture. So what is aperture? Well, aperture is the size of the lens opening. So generally speaking, a wider opening allows more light to reach your camera sensor, meaning that your camera is going to turn out to be a little bit brighter. And if your opening is a bit narrower or smaller, then less light will reach your camera sensor, which means that your picture is going to look slightly darker. Aperture also has impact on the DOF, which is the depth of field of your photo, which I will explain a little bit more about what that is. So for those of you who have been through CIV 100 or who are taking CIV 100 right now, you've probably seen these 3 letters somewhere, DOF, but it doesn't stand for degree of freedom in photography. It stands for depth of field. So if you have a larger opening when you take your picture, the background of your photo is going to be slightly blurry, and this is how if you go on LinkedIn, you see a lot of those nice profile pictures that they all have blurry background. This is how they achieve that. Those photos were taken with a bigger lens opening. So if you decrease your lens opening, your background becomes clear. You're going to get a clear background. So we've got two pictures on the right. They were taken with two different aperture settings. So we're going to do another poll right now to test your knowledge on on aperture. And I'm going to launch the poll right now. And yeah, let's see. Let's see if you got a hang of it. All right, so we'll give it 5 more seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I've seen some people switching their votes, which is interesting. All right, so I'm gonna end the poll and then I'm gonna share the result with you. So compared to the other two, compared to ISO and shutter speed, seems like this one is getting a somewhat of a mixed result, which is totally expected. Aperture, like I said, is one of those confusing terms. It's especially when you talk about how to actually measure aperture, which we'll get to in a minute. So if you look at the picture on the left, it has a blurry background. It has a blurry background, which means it was taken with a bigger opening of your lens. In that question, it says like which picture was taken with a bigger aperture. That's what we meant. And on the right hand side, if you look at that picture, it has a clearer background, which means the aperture setting in that case was well, you got a smaller opening. You used a smaller opening. So if we can go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit more about aperture. Like I said, you probably noticed when I was talking about aperture, especially what the setting of aperture is, I get a little bit confused, and I have to be a little bit careful with that, which is, and it has, and there's a reason for it, because the way you measure aperture is by the number called the f-stop number. So as you can see on the picture on the top left corner, you can see if you have a bigger opening, which means if your lens is opening bigger, your f-stop number is actually smaller. And which means if you have a lower f-stop number, the opening of your lens is actually bigger. So it's not like ISO or shutter speed that are very intuitive. Aperture is kind of they work the opposite. So it's very confusing when you're talking about your aperture setting. Among photographers, if you just say, "Oh, my aperture is higher" or "my aperture is lower," people get confused. People say, "Well, what do you actually mean by that? What do you mean by your aperture is higher or lower?" So it's better to say that your aperture number is it higher or lower, or is it bigger or smaller, or you can just simply just say my f-stop number is it higher or lower. So that way people can sort of understand what you're actually talking about. And that's probably why some of you got that question wrong, just because of the framing of that question, which is like totally fine. Yeah, so this is aperture. So now we've covered ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. So those are the so-called 3 pillars of photography, or some people would like to call them the big 3s of photography. And those 3 terms determine your exposure setting of your photo. But there are other important terms in photography as well. But unfortunately, we couldn't cover all of them today. But there's one more term that we would like to mention in today's workshop. And if we can go to the next slide, we will see it. So the next term that we would like to introduce is the focal length. So focal length is a characteristic of your lens. The manufacturing of your lens determines your focal length. So focal length is basically the distance between the rear nodal point of your lens and the image sensor of your camera. So generally speaking, the longer the lens is, the greater its focal length is. Although this is not always true. Sometimes you can see some giant camera lenses, but they can have a very short focal length. And if you want to know how focal length is measured, you can look at the two pictures at the top, at the top left. So remember we talked about there are 3 types of cameras that are available. So this is one of the difference between a mirrorless camera and a DSLR camera, is that if you actually look at its optical structure, it's slightly different, which we'll talk about that very soon when we get to specific types of cameras. And different focal length will give you different pictures. So the human eyes have a focal length in between 40 or 58 millimeters, because at the end of the day, our eyeballs are just optical sensors, so they also have a focal length. So that is why one of the most popular camera lens available is the 50 millimeter camera lens. It's because when you take a picture with a 50 millimeter camera lens, it looks very familiar to what you actually see with your eyes, and that's the reasoning behind it. So now we're going to do another poll, and so now we've got a picture on the top left corner of our screen. So like I said, generally speaking, you can tell how much the focal length of a camera lens is based on the size of it. So now we're just going to do another poll. I'm just going to launch it right here. Very easy question. How does the focal length of these lenses change from the left to the right? We'll give it roughly 10 seconds. Yeah, seems like people are responding. Very good. We'll give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Darsh. All right, so we will end the poll right now, and then we'll share the results. Yeah, so as you can see, most of you got it right. Focal length gradually increases, although, like I said, it's not always true. It's not always true, but you can sort of, you can have a rough guess when you see a lens. For example, if you see like a very, you get what I'm saying, right? If you see a smaller camera lens, then you sort of have an idea. This one probably focal length of this this lens is probably not that big. But now you might want, so now you probably understand why photographers buy so many lenses. Why we're so obsessed with different lenses. It's because they have their different uses. So for example, there's a reason why sport photographers tend to use large lenses. It's because of the requirement of their job, because they want to capture objects that are far away from them. Or if you're like a bird watcher, you see a bird that's like 2 kilometers away from you, and you want to take a picture of that bird. If you have a lens that has a very small focal length, you're not going to capture that bird. You have to use a focal length. You have to use a camera lens that's like very long, that has a very large focal length. So that's the reason why. But that creates a very interesting situation for photographers, is that there's so many lenses out there, and in an ideal world, we want to have everything. At least I want to have everything. Every time when I walk into a camera store, I see all the camera lenses on the shelf. It's like, I'm going to get all of them, or someday I'm going to get all of them. But no, you just can't, unless you're like a billionaire or something, or something like that. You can't. And that's the fun of photography, right? You have limited resources. You have limited tools that are available to you. So you have to figure out the right combination that works for you. Which brings us to the summary slide. So like we've just said, we've talked about the three pillars of photography: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. So those three terms have influence over the exposure of your picture, or in other words, the lighting of your photo. And they both influence each other. So generally speaking, even though like Wumi just said that if you take your photo with a higher ISO, the picture will become brighter. Yeah, that's true. That is true. But don't forget, you can also make your picture brighter by decreasing your shutter speed. Or if you want to get a sharper image at the same time, a slow shutter speed might not work for you. In that case, what do? You can turn to aperture. You can lower your aperture at the same time, so that you see those three terms work in combination. They both have their own special characteristics, but together they work in a very good way. And how do you know that you can get a good combination? I would like to so if you're interested in photography, or if you are interested in doing photo shoots, there's a checklist that you can follow which can help you significantly if you're a beginner. So the first item on the list is, you need to figure out what you're shooting today. Are you taking portraits, or are you taking pictures of events? That's going to impact the setting that you're going to set for your camera. The second item on the list is, what is the natural exposure setting? Are you taking these photos outdoors, or are you taking these photos indoors? Is there enough light? What time is it? Is it in the morning, or is it cloudy? And if it's cloudy, do I need to bring extra lighting source with me? So that's the second check. That's the second item. The third item on your list is, what equipment do you have? Can you actually do this job? If somebody asks you to take pictures of, let's say, a wedding inside a club or something, which is going to be very dark, and you're so excited and you said yes, but you don't have a flash, and your camera is not very good, you can't do that job. You will never be able to get the right exposure setting for your camera. It just doesn't work. There are limitations associated with your tool. So you need to be clear about what you could do with your tools. And then the last item on the list, which is one that people tend to forget a lot, is, what are the expectations? What do people expect from this photo shoot? If you're shooting pictures for a bunch of middle school students or high school students, you can probably get away with blurry photos. Probably they're not good, but you can probably get away with them because they don't know about photography. But if you're taking photos for your best friend for his or her wedding, you got paid a lot of money for it, you can't get away with bad photos. You can't even get away with photos that are not well composed. So that understanding this expectations of your client or whoever that you're working for is also very important for every photographer. So every time before you go out and take photos, think about those four things, and that will help you tremendously. Yeah, so that's the general checklist. And now we're going to get to section 2.0, which is going to be about cameras, and Wumi will talk about those.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, we would like to talk about the common types of cameras that you might use for photography. So there are three general types, which are digital single lens reflex, short for DSLR, point and shoot cameras, and mirrorless cameras. So a DSLR is a camera that typically allows you to view, compose, and focus the subject through the lens. DSLR offers many advantages, such as interchangeable lenses. A DSLR can be used on full automatic mode or other automatic settings, such as aperture parity mode, shutter speed parity mode, or any other features. We'll talk about them later when we see the different brands of cameras. You can also switch to full manual mode that allows you to adjust focus, exposure, flash, and many other settings separately by yourself, by your own, depends on the situation that you're in. So DSLRs are a very good choice for high quality photography, but they do have some disadvantages, such as they can be relatively expensive, they're really bulky and bulky and heavy to carry around, and also they're really complex with their different dials and buttons. We'll talk about them later, you'll see. So the picture on the top left is a DSLR camera. As you can see, comparing to the other two pictures, they're like a lot bigger and heavier, but they do give very good picture quality. So if you see the picture on the top right, that is a point and shoot camera. And point and shoot cameras are very compact in size, and they're designed for simple automatic use. Almost all point and shoot cameras have a lens that allows you to get a closer or wider view without physically moving forward or backward, just like your phone camera where you can zoom in and zoom out. Well, the lens is not interchangeable. You're given of what you have when you buy the point and shoot camera. The most common type of point and shoot camera is probably your phone camera, and also it provides relatively low picture quality, but it's portable, it's light, you can fit in a pocket, it's always available. And the last type is a mirrorless camera, which is the camera on the bottom of the slide. Mirrorless cameras capture light differently from DSLR cameras, which means that they don't have an optical mirror in front of its sensor. This gives mirrorless camera a lot of different features, such as they're very compact, they deliver good quality pictures. However, most mirrorless cameras have relatively smaller image sensors, meaning that these cameras usually produce pictures of somewhat lower quality of DSLR cameras, but not like always, but particularly in low light, because the image sensor is smaller, which means your ISO is not as good as with the cameras with the bigger image sensor. Yep, and now that we've talked about the three different types, we're gonna talk about cameras with like different brands, because they all have their own design and their sizes. And Jimbo will be talking about that. Yes, Jimbo, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Libby. All right, so like Wumi just said, the three types of commonly available cameras, some of them look very similar, especially a DSLR camera and a mirrorless camera. Sometimes they look quite similar. You might not be able to tell them apart, but again, cameras at the end of the day are manufactured by different companies, so every company has their own preference, and different users have different preference. That's why they choose different brands. So we're going to talk a little bit more about each brand of cameras a little bit. So the first brand that we're going to talk about is Nikon. So for the purpose of demonstration here today, we're going to use a Nikon D3400 as our example. The 3000 series is probably the most popular beginner cameras for Nikon. So if you have a D3300 or a D3200, they're roughly the same. So let's take a look at the picture here. So on the left-hand side, you see the top of the camera, and like what Wimi just said, one of the interesting thing about DSLR cameras is that it has a lot of automatic settings that you can utilize. This is especially beneficial for someone who is just starting to get into photography. To be honest, this is actually my first beginner camera. It was very useful, and I shot a lot of good pictures with it. So if you look at the biggest dial, which is called the mode dial, if we start from the green icon there, which says auto, it stands for auto, fully auto. All you have to do is click the shutter, make sure your object is focused, and then you click the shutter, picture is taken. You have no control over any of the parameters that we just talked about. And then if you go beyond auto, you can get to the program mode, which is another automatic setting that we're not going to go into too many details here. And then if you go beyond P mode, you get to the S mode. So what does S mode stand for? So S mode stands for shutter speed priority mode, meaning that you will have control over shutter speed. And then while you are changing the shutter speed of your camera, the camera itself, the computer itself, camera is sort of a computer these days, it will adjust the aperture and ISO for you. So you change one setting, and then the camera changes the other two for you. So that's what shutter speed priority mode does for your photos. Personally, when I was a beginner, this is probably my favorite mode to shoot on, because my belief is that if you have if you shoot a photo that's slightly darker, you can probably fix it later on. But if you have a blurry photo, well, nobody can save you. That photo is going to be blurry forever. So personally, I prefer shutter speed priority mode when I was a beginner. And if you go beyond the shutter speed mode, you get to the A mode, which is called aperture priority. It's the same logic, right? Aperture priority gives you control over aperture, and then the camera changes the other two settings for you. If you talk to a lot of professional photographers, if you go to like a camera shop and say, oh, what setting should I use if I'm just a beginner? Most people will say, oh, I'll start with aperture priority. It's a very useful mode, and you can try it out. And then if you go beyond aperture, then you get to the manual mode, which is the letter S. Manual mode means the camera is not helping you. You have control over all three settings. We would love to talk about how you shoot manual on a DSLR, but we don't have enough time today. And also, every camera is slightly different, even within the same family. So our suggestion would be, if you want to learn how to shoot manual with your own camera, YouTube is your best friend. So just type in your camera model and say how to shoot manual, and then there are tons of tutorials available that are going to explain things much better than Wumi and I. And I'm very sorry. It sounds bad, but unfortunately we don't have time today. So that's Nikon. And then if we get to a Canon, so Canon also manufactures a lot of DSLR cameras. Again, they look very similar and they have a lot of similar settings, but then their control system is slightly different from Nikon. So if you look at the dial here, you've got A mode for auto, you've got P for P mode, but then you got TV for shutter speed priority mode. It doesn't say the letter S anymore. But if you have a Canon camera, you should know that, oh, what is TV? TV is actually shutter speed priority mode. And then if you got to AV, then this is more intuitive, right? Letter A, aperture priority. And then if you go up beyond AV, you get to manual, same thing. And I'm going to ask Wumi to stop sharing the slides for a second here. And I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit more here with everybody of what a DSLR camera actually looks like. So I've got a Canon camera here. So this is InchSock's camera. This is a 5D Mark II. It's opposite on my side. So you can see it here. This is a 5D. And then looks kind of different from the one that I just showed you guys on the slides, right? This is why we don't want to go into too many details, because they're different. They're different. So the reason why it's called a DSLR, so if I take off the lens here, you can sort of see that there's a mirror. Did you see that mirror? Did you see the mirror in front of the sensor? This is why it's called DSLR. As a photographer, never expose the sensor long enough. This is the life of your camera. If you damage that sensor or that mirror, your camera is done. So never leave your camera like this. Don't do what I do right now. Always keep your lens on. All right. So that's a DSLR. And then I'm just going to ask Wumi to put the slides back on. All right. And now we get to, so now we've covered some of the DSLR cameras. So now we're going to some of the mirrorless cameras that we've mentioned. So the first commonly purchased Fuji, mirrorless cameras is the Fuji cameras, especially the X series. Fuji, as you can see on the picture on the left, it has a very different control system than a DSLR. First of all, even though you see there are a lot of dials on this camera, none of them has automatic settings. This camera is fully manual. At least its control system is fully manual. It doesn't have P mode, it doesn't have shutter speed priority mode, it doesn't have aperture priority mode. If you want to change your ISO, use the left dial. If you want to change your shutter speed, use the right dial. If you want to change your aperture, there's an aperture ring on your camera, and you twist that ring around to change your aperture. That's how you change settings on a Fuji camera. And as you can see, there are actually more dials on this camera. This is one of the interesting thing about Fuji is that they just love dials. There's so many dials on every Fuji camera, which some people prefer. For example, I'm someone that prefers to have a camera like this because I know the basics of photography well. I know how to change every setting to get a good photo. So I actually use Fuji camera. So I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit of how Fuji camera looks like in comparison. All right, so can everyone see me? Am I on the screen? All right, okay, so I'm going to thank you for that. So I've actually got two Fuji cameras. So this one is an X-T2. This one is an XH1. I mean, they look kind of similar, right? But as you can see, they have a lot of dials at the top. And they're slightly different, but they basically have the same control system. And the reason why this is called a mirrorless camera is that if I show you the sensor, see, there's no mirror. That's my sensor. So that's my sensor right there. There's no optical mirror in front of it. That's why it's called mirrorless. Yeah, so as you can see, it's slightly different from a DSLR camera. And I would like to ask Wimmy to turn the slides back on. So yeah, so that's Fuji. And then there's another brand of commonly purchased mirrorless cameras, which is Sony. And Wimmy is going to talk a little bit more about Sony.
I'm mute. Okay, yeah, I was on mute. Anyways, Sony has a lot of mirror. Wait, am I mute now? Can you hear me?
You're good. You're good.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Anyways, Sony has a lot of mirrorless cameras, and A7 III is one of their most popular model because it's a full frame mirrorless camera. It's not as big as DSLR cameras, but it shoots very nice 4K videos. It gives great picture quality, and it has a very long battery life. So if you can see, that's the camera that I have right now with me. It's really nice. I love it. Anyways, if you can see on the left of the picture on the left, you'll see the dial mode, which basically has the same picture modes as Nikon. You have the manual, shutter speed priority, aperture priority, and program mode, as well as the automatic mode. The other settings are for videography, which we're not going to talk about today. And then you have the exposure dial on the right. It easily switches the exposure, which is very nice for any of the manual modes. And then you have the front dial and the rear dial, which changes the aperture or the shutter speed, depending on different mode that you're on. And then in order to change the ISO, you just go to the control wheel on the right and then press the one on the right, and then you'll be able to change it as well. Yeah, it's really nice. And I will share some of this is my A7 III. I love it very much. And then as you can see, this is, whoops, okay, this is not. This is the mode dial right here. And then I typically use aperture priority mode just because I like a nice blurry background. And then it also gives me a very nice result. Okay, I'm kind of like zooming out here. And then this is the control wheel. I change the ISO on the right of the button right here. And then this is another control wheel to change aperture and shutter speed. This is the front dial. Oh, this is the rear dial. Yep. It's not very big comparing to a DSLR cameras, but it gives like really nice picture quality. So that's it. That's my Sony camera. I love it very much. Oof, okay, anyways, so now we're moving to another session, which is tips to improve on portrait photography that I picked on based on my experience in portrait photography. And I will share some of the pictures that I took to see just to demonstrate my points. Anyways, let's go to the next slide. So first of all, I would like to talk about the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is generally a type of off-center composition where important elements of a photography a photograph is placed along a 3x3 grid, which equally divides the image into 9 different parts. So with the rule of thirds, photographers envision 4 lines across their photographs, which also creates 4 intersecting points. So whenever I'm taking a picture, if I'm not putting the object in the middle, I would like to place them on either one of these lines or on one of the 4 intersections. And I will show you some of the pictures that I did in the past with some of the school members. Yeah, so as you can see, I like to put the models, their face and their torso, the main part of their torso along one of those lines. So that just makes the picture a lot more appealing and structured, as well as just makes a lot nicer to human eyes. Anyways, and then there's another picture. She's a really nice model, and then I just put her body on one of those lines, and it just makes the picture look a lot structured and appealing. Yeah, and then secondly, we have lighting. Lighting is very important to photography, especially portrait photography. And if you're shooting outdoors, I definitely recommend shooting in early morning or at dawn, just because the sunlight is not as intense as it was at like noon or early in the afternoon. If the sunlight is too strong, you'll get a very contract picture, which is not. The light is too bright. You get a lot of a sharp shadow and a sharp highlight, which just doesn't look as good. And also, don't be afraid to use backlight. Backlight, when I first started photography, people always be like, oh, you have to like shoot with the sun. Don't ever shoot backlight. And when I tried it myself, it actually looks really nice. So I'll show you some of the examples that I did. So such as this picture. I was standing behind the model with the light, but it just looks really nice. It kind of feels like he's glowing, as well as this picture. Sort of backlight, it just gives the light just outlines her body and it feels like she's glowing, which is really nice. And the model liked it too. And this picture as well, the backlight gives a very clean background. It just kind of like blurs out the sky and the rest of the clouds. Yeah, I really like it. And Jinbo also has something to say about backlight, so I'll just give the stage to him.
All right, thank you, Willie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dana. Those photos are nice. Those photos are very, very nice. Yeah, so I do a little bit of portrait photography as well. Some of my friends do portrait photography as well. For the purpose of backlighting, I don't think I had a very good backlighting picture, but so I'm just gonna use one of my friend's photo here. And by the way, guys, if you're using other people's photos, make sure that you give them credit for it. Very important for photographers. So backlighting, it could be a little bit complicated, and sometimes depends on when you're shooting it, or it depends on where the sun is. You might want to, if you have a flash, if you have an on-camera flash, you might want to bring a flash with you, and don't be afraid to experiment. If you get any bad photos, just nobody will know. You just don't share those photos with anyone, and that would be fine. As you can see from this picture here, this picture was taken right around sunset, 7 or 6 p.m. or something in August. It was sort of cloudy that day, so it was like perfect for portrait and for backlighting. So as you can see, this person's face was actually lit up by a little bit of light. It was not too much, but as you can see, the shadow it's on his neck is not very harsh, and that's what the flash does. And also another important thing is, if you're shooting portrait, try to focus on people's eyes. It's we're not sure why, but this is how we establish connections with people, which is through people's eyes. You see someone through their eyes, you can sort of tell whether they're being genuine or not. Again, the science of it, I'm not sure, but that's how people connect with each other. And if you have a flash, that's perfect. Light them up, light those eyes up, and then bring intimacy to your photos, which will be very helpful if you are a portrait photographer. And I'm going to show a little bit some more photos that I've taken over the years. Some of these photos, again, one or two of them might be a little bit overexposed. They were taken a long time ago. But as you can see, all of them were taken with an external, well, on-camera flash. So as you can see that the shadow on their face were not that harsh, and their eyes were lit up, and which look really nice, in my opinion. So that would be my 2 cents on portrait photography. Oh, and sorry, and then
I'm on mute
will,
again. Yes.
yes, sorry
Yes.
about
Don't worry about it. It's okay. So the last point I want to talk about is perspective. So generally, there are two types of like different. There's the half body shots and you have the full body shots. So for half body shots, I tend to put the camera horizontal to the model, so like not above them or like taking from below, and like this, I just like put the camera horizontal to the model, which gives like a sense of intimacy, just like Jimbo said. And yeah, I think it just looks really nice. It shows their face, their outfit, and their pose, and as well as the background and the models. They all love it, and I like the result too. And then in terms of full body shots, I like to put the camera as low as possible. Sometimes I kneel down in front of the models just so I can take, like, I will like go below them, and then that shows, it just gives like a really nice ratio to their torso, like their legs and their body, and it shows their nice outfit, it shows the nice background, and also, yeah, I think that's, it gives a really nice result as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's all we have to talk about. Now, if you guys have some questions, like feel free to text it in the chat, or you can open your mic and we'll do our best to answer your question.
Yeah, and then while you guys are getting your questions in, if you have any, we could, oh, we saw a question here. Yes, Brohard. You can turn on your mic. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just had a quick question from section 2. What is the difference between auto mode and program mode again?
To be entirely honest, when I was using my, when I was shooting with the DSLR, I didn't use program mode that much. It wasn't very helpful for me. So unfortunately, I don't think I can answer your question here. Based on what I've seen on the internet, it says that program mode is a more sensitive automatic mode, and it gives you control over one or two settings. If anybody knows more about program mode, seems like Darsh has more to say on this. Please feel free to jump in.
So the difference between program mode and auto mode is that auto mode auto mode controls the whole camera. It controls the ISO, aperture, shutter speed, every single thing. So it automatically sees the surroundings, your subject, and decides what the best conditions are. But for program mode, what happens is that they only choose the correct aperture and shutter speed for whatever subject you have in front of you. So, what photographers do is that they put their camera on program mode just to get like a creative sense of lighting. So sometimes program mode can really help you enhance the lighting near you, and it can allow like a creative flow for other features. So the camera will automatically adjust the aperture and shutter speed, and so you can just like play around with the other features. So you don't have to think about that.
That's
Yeah. That's.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Darsh, for saving us.
Thank you, Darsh. Thank you. And then, I think while we're waiting for questions to come in, we can probably go to the next slide and show you some bad photos that we've taken over the years. So right now, hopefully you've learned all the basics of photography. Hopefully you have a better idea of what they are and how to take photos. So we're gonna, I personally consider these two, bad photos. And then there are definitely things that could be improved. If you want to say something about, how to improve these photos, definitely feel free to do that. Feel free to turn on your mic. And when we have some more bad photos too, we can get to those. And if you're worried that you're going to be wrong, you can send me a message, send me a private message, and then I will read it out without mentioning you. That way we can get our discussion going on. And if nobody says anything, we will talk about what we think that could have been improved. That way we can help people hopefully improve their photography skills. Yeah, we're just gonna wait 1 or 2 minutes and let people respond. And then Wimmy, you can probably quickly show like your photos.
Oh, okay. Well, these two are not good pictures. Probably a lot that that I can do to improve them.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any idea, just feel free. Like even if you're wrong, we'll be like, there's a lot that can be improved on those pictures.
Yeah,
Probably,
for sure.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
and then while we were thinking about like what can be done, I just see a comment in the chat from Charlie.
Oh.
And it seems like Charlie has more to say about program mode, which is awesome. And yeah, Charlie, feel free to offer your comments.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my understanding program auto is it gives you more flexibility in some situations, because for aperture priority and shutter speed priority, the only thing you can control is basically shutter speed and aperture, which sometimes could be restricting. And the thing about program auto is you can override it. So it's not completely auto, but it's completely manual. So what I mean by that is in program auto, if the camera gives you a pair of settings that you don't really like, you can actually, I believe in most of the cameras, you can override it. What I mean by that is you can change one of the settings, including aperture or shutter speed. So the camera will give you another pair of settings that still gives you the same exposure or luminance in the photo.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charlie. I didn't know about that, so thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, I know.
For sure.
Oh,
and then,
I see another chat I see another message in the chat that says, do you guys really edit photos after? Yes, we do. We'll have another workshop like in terms of post-production later in this semester. So if you guys want to know what's going to happen, follow Humans of Skule and Skule Photography. We'll have a workshop on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Wimmy. Thank you for that. And then if you, Wimmy, would you go back to my photos, the previous slide?
Yes.
So we've got a comment from one of our, from a member of our audience. The comment is that, well, his suggestion would be that, so for the photo on the right, he's wondering, is the ISO too low for that? Because it looks kind of dark, right? So you might be wondering, yeah, maybe like, could you just like use a higher ISO? So we didn't review the setting here, but actually this picture was taken at, the ISO setting for this picture was above 3000. So it's already pretty high. And as you can see, the background is kind of blurry, which means the aperture setting is actually, I did my best. The aperture setting is actually 1.8 in this case, meaning that the opening of my lens has already reached its limit, which means there's nothing I could do with aperture to increase my exposure. And in terms of ISO, it's already quite high, to a point that you can already see noise, a lot of noise actually if you zoom in. And my shutter speed is actually quite low as well. My shutter speed is, in this case, 1/50. To me, that's quite low. I normally don't shoot that low if I want to get a sharp picture, or I just don't have steady hands. Some people can pull off. Some people can shoot 1/40, and they can still get their pictures relatively sharp. I can't. My hands are not that steady. So the conclusion is that if I want to improve this photo, maybe I could. This is dark. It's very dark outside. It's like around like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. In September, so it's very dark outside. And if I still want to take pictures outside, that late, I can probably go somewhere where there's some natural setting, not natural lighting. For example, if I can go somewhere where there's, you can see there are like street light, right? So maybe I can go somewhere near those light, and I can borrow some of those natural lighting from those street light, or I can just, if I have, if I have a flash, I should probably bring a flash with me. Yeah, that's what's wrong with the picture on the right, in my opinion, and that's what I think that could have been improved. Yeah, so thank you so much for that comment. And it's so if you have anything that you want to say about these photos, including Wumi's photos, if you don't feel comfortable sharing in the chat, you can privately message both of us on Zoom, and we'll share your insight with the group as well.
Yes.
I actually, sorry, this is Charlie again, but I actually think, yeah, I agree with the comment that it's too dark, but I also want to introduce an opinion that a photo is not always have to be in the middle of the histogram. I don't want to introduce histogram here, but the thing is, if you have every single picture always exposed, the exposure of the picture is always in the middle of the histogram, every single picture is going to look at the same. And it doesn't mean it's the best looking picture if it's exposed like properly, if you want to call that. But sometimes it's darker or it's brighter, can introduce different styles to a picture, and it could be a really good thing. It could be a bad thing, of course, but usually it's a really good thing, because I mean, if your picture always look at the same like brightness, it could be really dull or boring. So I would say always try different settings. Dark or overexposed doesn't mean it's not a good photo. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that actually brings us to like another topic, which is personal preference. Charlie's absolutely right. Sometimes if you want to include certain effects, doesn't really how define bad. Define what is bad for us, right? Everybody has a different opinion, and that's absolutely right. So at the end of the day, there are some common rules that you can follow. There's some common rules in place to make your photos better. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's your photo. You could decide how it's going to look in the future. So yeah, so that's why if you want to improve your photography skills, or if you want to learn more about it, or on your own, discussions like these are going to be very helpful. And then I'm seeing that there's another comment from Jackie about Lightroom. Oh, Wumi said Lightroom on iPad has free options.
Yeah, it's kind of free on iPad, but you can also pay for a subscription, but like the free version is good enough. Good enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so I guess we're just gonna look at my pictures, my bad pictures. Well, generally, there's definitely not enough light in both of these pictures. I could have increased the exposure or the ISO or just the aperture. Yeah, and especially the picture on the left. If we taken the picture like 30 minutes, an hour before, the natural lighting would be much better. There's just like, it's kind of blurry. There's a lot of noise on the left, like the picture on the left. Yeah, on the right, the picture on the right, the light is more focused to the view instead of the model, which just, the focus should be on the model, but not the pretty sky. Sort of on the pretty sky too, but we want to focus on the model in this case. So I would just increase the shutter speed, decrease the shutter speed, decrease the shutter speed, and I would also just maybe turn down the aperture a bit. Yeah, that's it. There's generally just not enough light. It looks very dark and dim. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And do we move on to the next slide? Do we? Oh, I can't. You're mute. You're on mute. Jimbo.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you for all the comments and suggestions. They're very, very insightful. We'd love to have this conversation going on. We can probably have this going on like forever, but we're almost at the end of our workshop. So we're just going to introduce some of the upcoming workshops that we're going to do in this semester, or the next semester. So we are going to have some workshops on event photography. So if you're interested in taking photos either indoors or outdoors, if you're interested in taking pictures of large groups of people, we would have a workshop for that. We can also introduce some of the equipment that you might need for taking photos like these, and in the upcoming workshop in that. And then we're going to have a workshop on street photography, street or urban photography. My personal experience is that a lot of photographers start taking photos on the street, right? You get a camera, you're excited, and then you go outdoors and then you take pictures. And so one of the most popular, or one of the commonly theme that people go with when they get a camera is street or urban photography. Again, like what Charlie just said, photography is subjective. There's some rules, there's some general rules that can help you, but at the end of the day, it's your photo. You decide how it turns out, and we're just there to offer our insight, and we don't want to misguide you or mislead anyone. So it's good that Charlie brought up that point. And then nature photography, also another very popular top theme that people tend to shoot. And then I think somebody asked, are we going to talk about post editing? Absolutely, absolutely. All of these photos won't look like that without the post editing process. And then there's some tips that we can offer too. And yeah,
that's pretty much it. And thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah,
and
thank you all for coming.
Just
and
follow our
I,
social.
Sorry, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No. I'm just saying that please follow our social media. We also actually have a YouTube account for Humans of Skule, and because we do for photography and videography. So if you want to check that out, please do. And just thank you so much for coming. I know you'd rather spend Saturday afternoon napping, but thank you so much for attending our workshop.
Yeah, and then for so I'm pretty sure both clubs, both Humans of Skule and photography, have general members sign up sheet. So most of you have already signed up for that, but if you're not, you can reach out to us, and we'll send those links to you guys too as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you soon in our upcoming workshops.
Yes. Thank you. You guys can leave now if you want. It's the end. We're ending this. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for coming. It was a pleasure to have all of you here and learn about photography. And looking forward to seeing you in future events too. And thank you, Jimbo and Bhumi, for conducting this.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Yeah,
and we're
this is fun.
And then we're probably going to, I'm going to stay here for 10 or 15 minutes, just in case if anyone wants to ask questions or have any concerns.
I'll leave when everyone else is.
Sure, yes.
Not there.
Thank you, Willie.
No problem. I don't have anything. Oh.
Sorry, I just have a question. Is Skule photography does Skule photography work with Skule book to produce the official yearbook of the school, or they work differently and interdependently?
So that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So Skule book is also part of the Engineering Society. So Skule photography is also part of ENGSOC, but we're not trying to we're not competing with each other. Skule photography, our goal is to educate. I don't want to say educate, but share our insight on photography with other people in school who are interested in photography. So in that case, if Schoolbook needs our help finding photographers, or if they need training for their volunteers, we're here to help. At the end of the day, we're not here to steal anybody's work. So let's say, Charlie, if you are a volunteer for Schoolbook, you can be part of Schoolbook, because you can be part of school photography as well. There's no conflict. And I'm pretty sure you can manage both at the same time as well. Again, we're not like competing with each other. Same thing with Humans of School, where we're not competing with each other. We're trying to work together, to reach a better outcome. Hopefully
Okay, that's good to know, because I think basically what Schoolbook has is just photographers and graphic designers, and which school photography also take photos. That's why I think they kind of like have some same role and same thing there. So I'm really not sure about that, but it's good to know. So I can join both of the teams and try to contribute to both. And also, I'm wondering if I take some photos in future. Let's say I join both of the team. Is that possible? I can like the photo copyright belongs to me, or it belongs to school society, or like school photography, or like Schoolbook?
Generally speaking, we respect every photographer's choice. That photo was taken by you. At the end of the day, it belongs to you. Whether you prefer to share those photos with the school community or not, whether you want your photos to be uploaded onto photos.school.ca, that's up to you. In terms of copyright, if you want to add your own watermark, I would leave that option to you. Some people, you also might want to check with whoever that you're working for, right? Some people prefer not to have watermark. And if you work for Schoolbook, I don't think I can recall seeing any photos within a Schoolbook that has like watermarks. So I'll leave that to you. And if at the end of the day, we're all photographers. We respect each other's work. If you have any questions, or if you don't think that something is done correctly, just have a talk with whoever that's in charge. I'm pretty sure most people are going to be like very reasonable. At least I think I'm reasonable.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you so much for answering that. And my last question, I'm so sorry about that. So I just have to keep an eye on the school photography Instagram for joining the team. That's what you said?
Oh yes. So if you want to sign up to become a general member, is that what you're referring to?
No, like I know the email you sent me, the general member is like for everyone, but if you want to contribute, that's another membership, or it's the same like as general member. So I'm quite confused about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So for now, if you would like to contribute, so let's say if we have events coming up in the future, or if we have, let's say, workshops that we need help from people, we'll reach out to our general members. We'll say, hey, everybody, are you interested in this? And you can join. You can contribute that way, or if you want to be more involved, we've got some. Unfortunately, we've already finished our first round of hiring of executive members, but I'm pretty sure there's a second round that's coming soon. So you can you follow our social media channels, and stay tuned for that. Yeah, and then keep an eye on that. And
so
yeah,
how do I see, like, where do you guys like make recruitment like posters or something? Because I don't see anything on the Instagram page. That's why I didn't know there was a first round of recruitment. But I do want to join that, I think, the second one. So we're kind of on those kind of information. I checked school website, but there's nothing there except for an email. So
yeah. So if you don't see it, that means it's probably means like it's already happened. And for example, we actually hired all of our executives. Well, our first round of hiring was completed, before September. So that happened in the summer. Because we want to get some upper years involved first, and we love first years and we would like to have like new blood in our team. So that's why we have the second round, which is coming up soon. And the reason why you probably didn't see the first round was because that happened earlier. And like I said, School of Photography, it's a new directorship. It was created this year. This is like its first year. So yeah, there are a lot of logistics that have to be worked out, which took a while. So that's probably why I didn't see it. But don't worry about it. There are more opportunities coming. Yeah, now you have where to reach us. That we have Instagram. That we have Facebook. You have our email. If you have any questions, just let us know.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm on mute now. Thank you. Anyone else has any questions? Or you just here because you forgot to